All right, so NAMM 2020 here with Riki Rachtman at his Cathouse themed booth at NAMM. How's it going today?
It's going good. You've caught me at the very end of NAMM, so I'm like, if you talk to anybody here, in the first day, they're like, hey, we're really ready. Everything's getting exciting. Talk about the last day. It's like, yeah, I'm ready. It's like this is like a war zone, It finally is ending. Everybody's winding down. It's a little bit overwhelming, but it was a great time.
And so you've been promoting your new podcast, the Triple R, Riki Rachtman Radio. So tell us a little bit about that, and how is it different from the Cathouse podcast you've been doing?
Well, the Cathouse Hollywood podcast I started a year ago, and it was just recapping some of the crazy stories that happened at my club, the Cathouse. But it's the artists themselves telling the stories. Like it might be John Five talking about when he used to sneak into the Cathouse and all the decadent things he saw, or Billy Duffy from the Cult, or the story about Axl Rose chasing David Bowie down the street, or just any of these crazy things that happen at the Cathouse. But what happened is, I like having conversations with people, but I would talk to people and I go, wow, I can't really put this on the Cathouse podcast. So I decided to start a show called the Triple R, which was based on a radio show I used to do in Los Angeles. And that way I can really do anything I want I can do on the Triple R, because there is no real format. So I launched that 2 days ago and it did really well. Entered iTunes at 18, and for being an independent podcaster, that's pretty good. And so I just launched that 2 days ago. It's called the Triple R, and right now it's on iTunes and Spotify and most places. Cathouse Hollywood podcast is everywhere.
So you're going to keep the both of them going from here on out?
Oh, I'm sure going to try. The Cathouse Hollywood podcast will be out every so often whenever I've got material or a guest for a new episode. The Triple R will be out weekly. So, we're going to go from Zach Wilde to the next week having the pop star Tiffany, to photographer Neil Preston, to I was one of the last people to interview Burt Reynolds at a convention. So the Triple R is going to have everything.
That's awesome. So for the Triple R podcast, so it's going to be similar in format to the Cathouse, though?
No, I had a podcast. I had a radio show. If you listen to the first episode of the Triple R, it talks about how I lost my radio show in Los Angeles, which is rather unique, and talks about going from a lot of money to zero money really quickly. And then it just has there's interviews. I like to say conversations. I don't like to say interviews. And then it's just topics, and there's really no format at all. As opposed to the Cathouse Hollywood podcast, everything needs to stay within that 80s Cathouse thing and things that involved around that club or that area. So that's would be the Cathouse Hollywood podcast. Is totally different.
So how did you get started podcasting in general? Was it just kind of a transition from radio into podcasting for you?
Unlike a lot of people that are into podcasting now, I do have a real job. I do a radio show called Racing Rocks, where I talk about racing and play rock and roll, and I've been doing it for 17 years. It's on radio stations all over America. But I wanted to tell, a lot of people said, oh, you should write a book. I'm like, I don't want to write a book. I'll just tell the stories. So that's how the Cathouse Hollywood podcast started, me just telling the stories. And then seeing, when it's like in no time, it's at 250,000 downloads. I'm like, oh, people like these stories, And people all over the world are buying Cathouse t-shirts and stuff like that. So I just decided, I'm going to just put this out there, because if it's a podcast, I don't have a program director. I don't have anybody telling me the way I should need to do it, So that's why it's a little more freedom.
You are the program director, pretty much.
The program director, producer, and editor. The beauty of the podcasting is you really can't do everything yourself. And anybody can do it. Anybody can do a podcast.
Do you have any kind of wish list for guests in mind for the upcoming Triple R podcast?
My old dream is, of course, to interview anybody in the Rolling Stones. But there's also people that I would like to interview that aren't necessarily, the type of music that I listen to, whether it's a ridiculously huge pop star or an actor or an athlete or somebody that's just a pop culture icon. I made a list, and I don't remember where it was. It's NAMM. You should ask me on Thursday. But I made a list of ideal people that I'd like to interview. But it's pretty much, because in rock and roll, I've interviewed everybody I could possibly want to interview. I've interviewed everybody. So this would just be more people that I think are just interesting people.
That's cool, and it sounds like it'd pretty much be as diverse as NAMM, because, you got the metal stuff going on, you got classical stuff going on in another room, all that.
I'm just glad I'm not in the drum room. So everything else, I had lunch in the drum room, and it's just non-stop noise. It's brutal, like non-stop. I don't know what happens to people when they leave that, because if you're in that room like the whole time, it was perfect. We're across from like some blues guitars and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, but if we were in like the flute section or the drums is the worst.
Drums are crazy. I was actually just back there at the Sawtooth booth, and apparently Vinny Appice got a citation because he was playing too loudly, and they're like trying to shush him down there.
There were some booths that had signs that said, due to noise ordinance, this booth has been shut down. I'm like, God, I'm doing something wrong if I don't have one of those signs. It's like I kind of feel like I want one of those signs. I want to get shut down for noise, but I didn't.
Yeah, so Sawtooth is right on the borderline there, but literally only because of Vinny Appice. And I thought, if it happens, how metal is that, right?
Right, exact. That's something that's like, oh, I'm in trouble because I'm too loud. That's brilliant. I should be so lucky.
Anything like that ever happened with the Cathouse?
Oh, God. Yeah, it probably wasn't a good idea. Right after Body Count's Cop Killer came out, and the LAPD banned Ice-T, banned all the music and everything, and I booked him that week. That was probably nuts. But Ice-T told me, he's like, yeah, nobody will let us play. We can't get any shows. I'm like, come play the Cathouse. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. And all the cops were there. Nothing happened, but,
Still kind of taking a risk there, and I feel like Cathouse probably took a lot of risks.
Oh, my God. You have no idea. There was a reason that we didn't allow cameras in there, and now I'm kind of bummed because I wish I had pictures, but the kind of stuff that happened there wouldn't happen if we had cameras.
I've actually heard about that you had like a no camera policy for the Cathouse, and I'm over here thinking there's no way that would fly now. Like, people would sneak in, there would be no way.
Yeah, because everybody's got their phones. But yeah, we didn't allow any cameras in the Cathouse. It was fun.
Must have been a good time.
There were very few rules because we had no rules. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Okay.
I know you needed to have no cameras because there was no rules.
We needed to make a rule because we have no rules. That's pretty much it.
Well, I know things are winding down around us here, but I know, right?
I'm winding down.
But yeah, so thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Let's just wrap it up by you plugging anything you got going on.
Well, the Cathouse Hollywood podcast is on all podcast platforms. The Triple R right now is on Spotify and iTunes. And if you don't know where any of this stuff is, just go to cathousehollywood.com.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you.